Okay, let's talk about two words you hear all the time, often used as if they mean the same thing: Islam and Islamism. But here's the thing: they are worlds apart. One is a personal faith, the other is a political ideology. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what separates them. So, what is the difference, really? That's the big question. And it's exactly what we're going to get into right now. All right, first things first, we need to be super clear about this. This is not a subtle, nitpicky difference. We are talking about two completely different categories of ideas. It's faith versus political ideology. At its heart, the difference is actually pretty straightforward. Think of it like this: Islam is all about a spiritual journey. It's focused on an individual's personal relationship with God. Islamism, on the other hand, that's a political playbook. Its goal is to take power and reshape an entire country, an entire society, based on its very specific interpretation. Okay, this table really lays it all out, doesn't it? Just look at the main goals. For Islam, it's about the salvation of the soul. For Islamism, it's about seizing power. Totally different aims. And here's the really crucial part. Look at how they view law. For most Muslims, Sharia is a personal moral guide, kind of like a compass for how to live a good life. But for an Islamist, it's a rigid legal code that they believe should be the law of the land, forced on everybody. But okay, it's not that simple. Because even when we're just talking about Islamism, there are huge differences. It is definitely not one single, unified movement. And that's probably the most important thing to remember here. Islamism is not a monolith, it's a spectrum. I mean, think about other big political ideas like socialism or conservatism. They're not just one thing, right? They've got all these different factions with totally different ideas on how to get things done. So on one side of that spectrum, you've got what we can call the moderate or political Islamists. These are the groups that, for the most part, decide to work within the system. They'll form political parties, they'll participate in elections. They're trying to achieve their goals by changing things from the inside out. We've seen this with some parties in countries like Turkey, Tunisia, and Indonesia. But then, on the complete other end of the spectrum, you have the radical jihadist Islamists. And these guys, they throw the rulebook out the window. They believe violence and terrorism are justified tools. They don't care about national borders. Their big picture goal is a global caliphate, one giant Islamic state. And yeah, this is the worldview of groups we all know, like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Okay, so this all begs a pretty big question. How many people actually believe this stuff? Let's take a look at the numbers, because they really help put all of this into perspective. First, let's start with the big picture. There are about 1.9 billion Muslims on the planet. I mean, just let that sink in. We're talking about almost a quarter of the entire human population. It's an absolutely massive and incredibly diverse group of people. All right, now this chart is where things get really interesting and, frankly, really important. The number of active violent extremists, it's a tiny, tiny fraction of that 1.9 billion, but the number of people who might sympathize with their goals, even if they don't act on it, that's estimated to be somewhere around 100 to 200 million people. Now, as a percentage, that's still pretty small, but in raw numbers, that is a huge population. And look, an even bigger slice of the pie supports the nonviolent political version of Islamism. And this right here, this chart just blows up the whole idea of a single, unified Muslim world. Take a look at the support for making Sharia the official law of the land, which is, a core goal of Islamism. In Afghanistan, it's almost universal, 99%. But then you look at a country like Turkey, and it plummets to just 12%. It just goes to show you how incredibly different the political landscape is from one country to the next. So all of this leads to a kind of paradox. A question a lot of people outside the Muslim world ask. If the overwhelming majority of Muslims are not extremists, then why? Why don't we see and hear more widespread, loud condemnation of these radical groups? Let's dig into that paradox a little deeper. I mean, we'll often see these enormous street protests about international conflicts, right? But when extremist groups commit horrible atrocities, often killing other Muslims, the public outrage can seem, quieter. So what's going on here? What explains the so-called silent majority? Well, there's no single easy answer. It's actually a mix of some really powerful factors. First, there's a psychological element. It is just human nature that it's way easier to rally against an outside enemy than it is to turn inward and confront a messy, shameful problem inside your own community. Second, and you really can't overstate this one, is pure fear.
In many places, speaking out against these radical groups is not just risky, it can literally get you killed. Silence becomes a survival tactic. Third, we've got to think about technology. Social media, our main window into the world, runs on outrage. Moderate, thoughtful voices just don't go viral. The loudest, angry voices get all the attention. And finally, there's a kind of denial. A really common response is to just say, oh, those guys, they aren't real Muslims. And that, of course, is a way to sidestep the difficult job of confronting the problem head on.
So, to bring this all home, let's circle right back to where we started, with this one simple idea. It is, without a doubt, the most important takeaway here. Islam is trying to answer the question, what do I believe? It's personal, it's spiritual. Islamism, on the other hand, is trying to answer a totally different question. What should the state be? It's about power, it's about control, and really truly understanding that fundamental difference, that is the key to making sense of so much of what's happening in the world today.